the Washington Post reported that nearly 20,000 mercenaries are fighting in Ukraine. When you put together with the information that Putin gave us during that interview that he was talking about mercenaries in Ukraine, do you think this number is precise?
There are definitely, there is a significant number of those mercenaries. Today in RIA News, which is a very reputable Russian media organization, and it was, of course, reported across the number of the major news outlets, is the fact that Russian officials already openly going on record talking about primarily American mercenaries, so-called, which are not mercenaries, they are not volunteers, they are professional military, which go there undercover, under legend. They fly aircraft, obviously, which are being shut down. They man their air defense complexes, and most of the ground troops which are present there, they are barrier troops. They are primarily shooting into the backs of the Ukrainian armed forces who want to retreat, or who, for example, want to surrender. And they already characterize their combat capabilities, saying that, well, they are well trained, but they really buckle under the serious pressure, which is, of course, a very indicative and very important, how to put it, note on Russian part. So yeah, they know how to shoot into backs of retreating troops. But I don't think so they operate openly in any kind of formation on the front line. And again, we know that number of them have been taken prisoners by Russia. So whatever is happening now behind curtains, so to speak, between Russians and Americans in terms of whatever they exchange or return, I don't know. But we already have a good characterization of them.
Instagram has started blocking videos of an Abrams that is being hit and burning down. When you look at the Abrams and compare it with the German, with the tanks coming from the United Kingdom, they didn't do this for those tanks, and they're doing this for Abrams.
Because it's all American military mythology. American military history of the end of the 20th century, well, actually the 20th century, and especially the start of the 21st, is confabulated. That means what? It was imagined. It's most of it, even which in no way diminishes the heroism and dedication, for example, of American GIs during the World War II, and there, some really outstanding American generals, not George Patton, but others actually. And but it's, they like to pretend that they defeated Hitler. Well, in reality, of course, they were dealing with the basically wash out troops, which haven't been in nothing in comparison to the Wehrmacht, for example, circa 1941, 1942, and even 1943. So it was confabulated, and the question now is that the part of this mythology, obviously, was built around another war, which militarily wasn't that consequential. We're talking about the First Gulf War, and it was spun so much by propaganda. So the way it goes, and they don't like to be humiliated publicly. Because but professionals already know the real score, honestly. United States Army is absolutely not what they try to portray them be. And the latest information, especially about those so-called volunteers, that they really buckle under the pressure in the real war, So, and yeah, I mean, what's the point for them to die there for whatever, Ukraine? Sure, they have no real attachment there. And obviously from the moral position of the troops there, you know what, it's do they even believe in the mission? I doubt it. I don't think so.
When you look at this conflict right now, we have been in this conflict 19 months, 20 months. How prepared was the West? How prepared was Russia? How do you compare them?
Russia was prepared, and the Russians started to prepare actually since 2007, since Vladimir Putin's famous Munich speech, and then, of course, wiping out the floor with the Georgian army, the first American proxy, which have been defeated, and actually quite disastrously for Georgia, as we know. But Russia was preparing. It was the set of the reforms. It was the set of the political and economic reforms, and especially of the Russian state, returning back the control to the strategic resources. And this process continues as we speak. So Russia was prepared. The West, as I already stated, there are no competent people in the Western elites. Haven't been there for the last 20 years at least. We finally get this the crop of those people who went through the so-called elite machine, preparing machine, like Ivy League in the United States or Cambridge or Oxford, in UK, and you see the result. And the political system is utterly corrupt, and those people, they really don't have any professions, they don't have any specific professional skills, and as the result, they thought they completely bought this stupidest narrative about Russian history, about Russia and Russians. I write about this for now more than 10 years nonstop. They believe that, that once the sanctions are introduced, Putin's regime will collapse. Russians will run with the open arms, to meet the whatever, Western liberators. I mean, those people are delusional. They have been delusional, for good part, all of the 21st century and a good part of the 20th century. As I already stated, when you literally imagine your history, including military history, which is absolutely not true, you will begin to believe this, and then they suddenly face the reality of real economy, real military, real political systems, which actually are functional. So, and as the result, I mean, you have to be a complete moron to believe that late Alexei Navalny could have been the president of Russia. You have to be completely detached from the, real world. And as I already stated, and I'm on record, you can quote me on this. Russian study field in the United States is the wasteland filled with the pseudo-academic shysters who are basically telling the American elites what they want to hear, how great they are and how bad Russians are, because Russians are those, how to put it, Stalinists, totalitarian people. It's Mordor. So there you go. And as the result, we have the result what we have today.
When you look at Navalny, we see everything that Putin has been doing all these years for uniting Russia, for bringing all of these people together from various religions, ethnicities, all feel Russians right now. He was the opposite way. He was trying to undo everything Putin was trying to do, and he did during these years. How do you find the case of Navalny, and how did you see this repercussion of his death in the Western media?
Well, the point is nobody cares about the Western Russia anymore. Just simple as that. Nobody gives a whatever, what I was about to say. So, except for the marginalized, urban, uber liberal, creative class, the rest of the people don't care anymore. So, for starters, Russians never lived as well as they do today. Never in history. They just enjoying good life, and even despite the war, it's improving. And secondly, look at the figure of Navalny, who is obviously, everybody understood it just in the open. Everybody were discussing it, that he's nothing more than some asset of the CIA or maybe MI6. And that tells you how incompetent they are. So, they're obviously trying now to engage with the communists. So there we go. Who would ever thought that? So, and they just incompetent. That's the whole thing. They don't understand Russia. They may read books on Russian history, but they don't understand. The Russia which they see is the Russia which Solzhenitsyn described to them. This Mordor, Gulag, and the fact that Russia is politically freer than the United States. Culturally, it is certainly freer, and it certainly doesn't do the things which West is doing to completely annihilate its own civilization. And as the result, they fail. They will fail again. They just don't get it, and This is a systemic problem. It starts from the basically public school, then projects itself into the institutions of the higher learning, higher education. And as I already stated, that comes back, it will always come back to the basically square one. The Russian study field in the United States or in the West, it's garbage. It's absolute garbage. It was the basically bunch of the sinecures to be abused by all kinds of the shysters, you know. So, and when you don't have the situational awareness, what is going to happen? You're going to lose. In some sense, for Russians, it's actually very, how to put it, profitable. For example, I could be actually dangerous for Russia because you know what? I'm trying to break the this delusion because Russians wouldn't mind having these delusional people in the West who are pretty much occupy most of the political positions, positions of political power. So if they want to continue to live in this idiotic, parallel universe, sure, let them. You know, as long as there is no some how to put it polite attempts to unleash nuclear war. For that, Russia has deterrent. So there you go. Who cares? You know. It's the problem of the West. And the West is doing, well, it's doing a swell job of killing itself.
We've seen that Biden was calling Putin with some bad words, and Anthony Blinken, in his meeting with Lula da Silva, the president of Brazil, said that he sees no conditions for peace talks. With all that said, is it going to change the Russian mind? Because Putin, in his interview, was talking about negotiations. He was talking about cooperation. With this administration in office, is that possible?
No, not with these people. No, absolutely not. So, and that's the point, behavior of Biden, Blinken, or Sullivan, these are highly uncultured people. We know that Mr. Sullivan was communicating and still communicates with Mr. Ushakov, it's deputy foreign minister of Russia. Whatever they talk about, but you cannot negotiate with Obama. And obviously, we understand that Obama is basically the driving force behind Biden administration. So, and you cannot communicate with those people. First, they, as I already stated, they are illiterate and they are highly uncultured. So in this particular case, they do not even understand the fundamentals of the statecraft, and they are empty suits in this respect because they are all ideologues. And their desperation, for example, like Biden calling Mr. Putin crazy son of a bitch, I mean, it's like, you know what, can you be offended by the 5-year-old child? You can't. I mean, they're kids, okay? And that's the whole point. This is the thing which many people still don't get it. The disparity between, for example, current political class in Russia and political class in the West, in the United States, it is so gigantic. It cannot be bridged with these people. Some new generation of the American politicians should come, come on stage and, present the United States in some different light. And then maybe, but again, many people also misunderstand what Putin, Lavrov, Medvedev say. They always say this. They do not offer negotiations. They always say that Russia is open for negotiations. But each time they will procrastinate and will delay coming to Russia, the worse and worse it will become for the combined West. Mr. Lavrov last week he stated that there is still very little time left to save something of Ukraine. I mean, the more it goes, there will be no Ukraine. And then, of course, again, we already know the combined West, the United States, they will be dictated the conditions of the surrender. The only issue for the United States now diplomatically is negotiate how severe those conditions will be, period. There's no such thing as West can win. It cannot. That cannot win militarily, economically, what have you. And so as the result, they do what the only thing they can do. They do PR, public relations stunts. Those, as I already stated, American journalists, average American journalists are not journalists. They are propagandists. American military, after I read the latest their document, I'm scratching my head. Evidently, they learn nothing. And then same goes for the political class. They cannot govern. They don't have skills. They don't have education for that. As the result, yeah, you cannot communicate with them on equal basis when you apply the basically skills which are recognized by the other of statesmanship. So, and as the result, as I already stated, Mr. Biden can call Putin whatever he wants, or they will try to impress on Russia something. You cannot be insulted by the 5-year-old child because it's a child. Here we have the who have zero competences in across the whole board of the governance skills, and simple as that.
Zelensky said that the number of casualties on the part of Ukrainian was 33,000, which was so shocking. And even CNN was saying that no, it's beyond that. It's 71,000. When it comes to the casualties on the part of Ukrainian, in your opinion, what would be the most accurate number?
Mr. Shoigu, 3 days ago, he gave the updated data on the casualties of armed forces of Ukraine. He gave it 444,000 KIAs and MIAs and wounded. So you can easily multiply this number by 2. The reason I'm saying that, because Russians probably do this because these are the only things which Russians can confirm. They literally can go in and say, oh, I have this body, or I know that this is, a wounded. What happens in the tactical area, where Russians absolutely wreaking havoc with that. It's the same as what's the case with the this third assault brigade, which is essentially Azov, in which was attacked by the Iskander missiles at Selidova. Russians don't even count numbers there because they cannot objectively control them. They see some corpses because obviously the drone flies in, gives the targeting, and gives the post-battle assessment. But again, how you can calculate that? And then, so when you go basically on these numbers, and you can easily extrapolate, we're looking at least of the 500,000 killed, and probably more the same number or even more. Usually it's 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. So we altogether are looking at something, when the numbers will be presented, at 1.5 million, I would say, which will be killed and missing and wounded in action. Maybe more by the number of the graveyards, essentially cemeteries. It's appalling. You will look at those. There are hundreds of them, and there are. When you look at them, some of them just go beyond the horizon, and they're just all those people killed there, the armed forces of Ukraine personnel. So we're looking at horrifying numbers, and that is the when even CNN laughs at it. That means something.
Some reports from the Ukrainian intelligence that they're fearing an attempt of overthrowing Zelensky in the spring. Is that related to this conflict between Zelensky and Zelensky?
It's kind of the internal, how to say, they are like those cockroaches or scorpions in the can, in the jar, which try to kill each other. So who cares, if Zelensky will be overthrown or some other general will be killed? And it changes nothing in terms of the outcome. And it doesn't matter that Zelensky is probably now constantly high on cocaine, and he definitely doesn't come across as a person in the normal state of mind. And even his appearance tells you that. So they kill or remove Zelensky, doesn't matter who comes in. There are certain conditions which will be either fulfilled or Ukraine will cease to exist completely. Simple as that.
Macron is changing his attitude toward this conflict and is talking about sending troops, NATO troops, to Ukraine. This is the guy who was trying to make some sort of negotiations between the West and Russia when this conflict started and during this conflict. And he's changing totally. What's the reason behind this, and what's the strategy, in your opinion, on the part of Macron?
Part of the strategy on the part of Macron, that listen, this is French. They make the bed, let them sleep in it. They voted for the guy. So is the fact that his numbers are dismal in terms of approval numbers, and Western politicians being very, as I already stated, very uncultured, and most of them are wussies. Actually, if you look at the modern crop of the politicians, they are, the guys who never held a real job in their life, and they lived the life of luxury. They're spoiled brats, petulant children, and the only thing they know that if you want to raise some numbers is, oh, let's come across as tough, and so how you gonna make yourself look tough? Let's bark at Russia. It's just Chihuahua barking at the elephant, and so when he offered troops to Russia, obviously the reaction followed immediately from all countries of NATO, United States, United Kingdom, that we're not sending any troops. At least they now you have to understand also that French somehow they have their own very specific, very French view of the world around them. Leo Tolstoy beautifully described it in The War and Peace. They think that they are so just absolutely irresistible and wonderful people. So they suddenly, of course, when those killed French volunteers, quote unquote, which are essentially have been the officers of the French intelligence, have been killed by Russians, they still finding the way to kind of justify it, that, oh yeah, you know what, let's send troops or something like this. So that's totally irrational behavior, and it is done for numbers of reasons, which are, of course, internal political dynamics, trying to look tough, and then, you know what, they are not rational people really anymore. So, and the attempts of Macron to start negotiating at the start of the special military operation, it's all PR too, So he wasn't doing this in good faith. So all PR, all PR. The whole situation around the combined West right now is nothing than PR.
They're talking about using the frozen Russian assets to send arms to Ukraine. If they do this, what would be the reaction on the part of Russians?
Well, Russia obviously will expropriate. It has some assets. Russians most likely will not touch the private property of even such French organization like Auchan. It's a very famous network of the large stores, something like a kind of European Walmart. It operates in Russia. They said, no, screw you people. We're not going anywhere, which is, I'm applauding them for being, it's their market, sure. But Russia has enough assets which it can expropriate. But the point is, if they do that, it's over for the West. It's already over for the West anyway. It's just they will accelerate their collapse of their imagery. And because if you steal somebody's assets, guess how other countries will look at that. So they will look at that with nobody will want to do the business with the West anymore. And it's already happening. It's just that it will accelerate and it will basically proceed with much higher speed.
CIA Director William Burns was in Kiev. And in your opinion, what was the reason behind this trip, and what was the necessity of being there personally?
My thought would be that first, there is some, again, as I already stated, internal dynamics in Ukraine is such that United States is really involved directly in the basically control of the of Kiev regime. Ukraine essentially is now the part of the American operation, and so visits by Victoria Nuland or William Burns, it is primarily visits for the settling some things inside there, what is essentially becoming now, turmoil, let's put it this way, politely, in reality, disintegration of the whole regime. And there are signs that regime in Kiev disintegrates. And so they are going there, as caretakers, they try to settle it and do some kind, whatever they try to do, stitch together whatever is, going at the seams. And that's the only way I can explain it. There's no operational military intelligence sense of Burns going there other than political, mingling and doing political thing.
Do you see the Biden administration successful in their attempts to send more aids to Ukraine? Because the Republicans are not willing to do that.
I think it's possible that these funds will be, sent or unblocked, so to speak, on the level in Congress. It's not going to change much, really. I mean, first, the question is, this money, if they go to Ukraine, these are primarily for keeping Ukrainian apparatus, state apparatus running, like paying pensions, paying salaries of the bureaucrats, things of this nature. There is no real serious economic activity in Ukraine anymore because it's half of the Ukrainian budget is essentially based on the donations and support from the European Union and United States. So, and in terms of weapons, the United States simply doesn't produce enough weapons for itself. Forget about, so if they want to start to going deep into their non-untouchable stocks, sure, they can do that. But then again, United States will have pretty much no weapons left.
I asked this question, the previous question, because Wall Street Journal reported that no one wants Ukraine to win. There is an article in Wall Street Journal. And we had a German journalist, Julian Robke. He says that Europeans send less than 10% of their military budget, and they're putting all the blame on the United States. It seems that they're thinking that they did nothing for Ukraine in the eyes of these people in Wall Street Journal, in Bild, in these German journalists. Is that the reality?
No, Germany is a major, basically, supporter and supplier for Ukraine. So it's all garbage, obviously. It's all about internal fighting right now. There are cracks in the European Union now, and Europeans, I mean, the whole political landscape right now in the United States and in Europe is basically the landscape which is already as this volcano, super volcano in Wyoming, Yellowstone, to explode. And we see those signs. We are looking already in Europe going completely into the tyranny. There is no democracy. That is all garbage, it's all propaganda. So in the United States, and now you have all those factions, political factions, fighting between each other, because obviously, as I stated from the get-go when it all started, that it's over. The moment Russian troops entered 2 years ago at the February 24, the territory of the Donbas republics, it was over for the West as we know it. It's just a matter of how it will be formalized in terms of some kind of settlement. I don't know, how it's going to look down the road. They may continue to, do something about Ukraine, but it's over, and many people understand that. And some understand it on the, how to put it, intellectually, others understand this or, sense that purely on emotional level. And considering the pathetic level of, for example, American journalism, when you look at these people on, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, they are clowns, basically. These people, again, have no idea what they're dealing with. You can feel that they have to also somehow express their frustrations within the political system, which is completely ceased to function. American political system is on the verge of completely ceasing. In Europe, it's happening right now. And again, as I spoke recently, I don't remember with who, that even if you look at the farmers' protests, it's just the start, And so they will blame each other. Wall Street Journal will blame somebody in Germany. Germans will blame somebody elsewhere. So let them, it's the process, okay? The dam has been, breached, so to speak, and it will just only increase.
When you look at the Russian strategy right now, do you think that in their mind, they're thinking of crossing the Dnieper River, or they're not interested in doing that?
There are a number of ways of handling this. They certainly can. And even Medvedev said that, well, if it comes down to Kiev, so be it, we'll go to Kiev. It all depends. And again, this is the thing which many people do not understand. Russians fight the wars for the political ends, which are very well defined. And as I already stated, if you go back to the December 2021 and so-called Russian ultimatum, everything is in there. Everything is written there. Another matter that the more it drags out, the worse it will be, as I already stated, for the combined West. And again, so at some point of time, if it comes down to it, Ukraine will simply cease to exist. So, but Russia will not allow hostile Ukraine. And now it's not going to be even neutral. The Kiev regime will be removed. And then if Ukraine will be preserved as some kind of the geographic locality, it will be controlled from Moscow. But again, depending on the behavior of the Western political class, Ukraine may cease to exist altogether.
In this preparation of the British Army, their submarine has failed to launch a missile. If that's the quality that they're having right now, and you look at this conflict in the Red Sea between Houthis and the United States and United Kingdom, how do Russians and Chinese perceive this conflict? How well they were performing in the Red Sea, in your opinion?
Horribly. German frigate almost shut down MQ-9 Reaper today. And both missiles though failed. So it's a comedy, really. It's how can I say? It is, yeah, I know. It took the whole situation with a special military operation and Houthis to really expose the West as a paper tiger, and it is. And we already saw itself, what it's a French. I mean, they had like 200 Leclerc tanks. Half of them are not operational. So yeah, sure, let them send troops to Russia. And when you see this and things fail, well, obviously, make no mistake, I do not want to overplay it, because obviously things do break down. It's complex technology, and so Russians also have some things malfunction and things of this nature. Remarkably, in case of Vanguard submarine of the Royal Navy, it is altogether strange, because usually Trident D2, D5 is a fairly good missile. It's fairly reliable. It has a good record of launches. Why they have the issue with it? They had the issue with 2016. It failed, and now it failed there. I don't know what's going on there, but obviously we can say that in many respects we're looking at the not just technical readiness, which is evidently not very high. We're looking at more systemic approach in terms of the procurement strategies. And Western weapons, if you look at, for example, Western air defenses, and I'm not talking about Patriots, which are being, killed periodically in Ukraine. We can talk about NASAMS. We can talk about other types of air defense systems. They simply are not that effective. And it's like you look at this, man, oh my gosh, this is, they spent trillions of dollars on all that and it doesn't work, so what can I say? It is what it is.
For those people who are watching this performance of the British Navy and they compare it with the other countries in Europe, in German, with Italians or French, are they better than the United Kingdom? Are they at the same level? How do you see this?
French have totally in the first, you have to understand, in terms of strategic missiles, Royal Navy has 4 submarines, strategic missile submarines, Vanguard class, and I believe they can put to sea only 1 at this stage, and even that they have 16 silos, so to speak, but they go on the combat patrol with only 4 Trident D5 missiles out of possible 16. So it's really deterrent, but it's really not real deterrent. Real deterrent is French. Marine Nationale, they have the 4 Triumphant class strategic missile submarines, all of them carrying 16 missiles. and I believe 2 of them are on patrol every given moment of time. And that nuclear deterrent is completely independent of the United States. So if they decide, for some unknown reason to me, to launch, they can do it completely on their own volition. And France produces those missiles, and it maintains this small but capable, nuclear powered strategic missile submarines. The rest of it, not really serious, So
recently, Zelensky had an interview with Fox News. In this interview, Zelensky says that nobody needs Avdiivka. If that's the case, why they were sacrificing too much in Avdiivka? What was the importance of Avdiivka for Ukrainians?
Russians have the proverb, logic is the Moscow's science. I mean, meaning Russian science, which Ukrainians do not accept. Yeah, Bakhmut also wasn't important. Mariupol wasn't important. So the next thing, I mean, Kiev probably also will not be important. So this is how they think, because basically, if you look attentively what is happening in Ukraine, it's madness, actually. I never saw anything like this. The nation to be brainwashed to such a degree that it's just absolutely, it's incredible. It's on the level of the Nazi Germany, brainwashed to the point of supporting wars and things like that. This is the level, but it's multiplied even more so by the modern social media. And it's unbelievable. So they will lose. Now the Russians obviously advancing very well on Avdiivka axis, in Donetsk, but they're also moving towards Kupiansk. Guess what? Once Kupiansk fall, it's not going to be again important. We killed 20,000 people there of our own. We sacrificed them, but it's not important. This is how they think, literally, because as I already stated, when you look at them, they do nothing but PR. Those people do not have statesmanship capabilities. All of them, from Washington to Kiev, pretty much, and everything about PR, money, corruption, or just grift. And I mean, it's unbelievable. And guess what? Regular Ukrainians die in tens of thousands every month. It is just wow. What can I say?
He said that Ukraine has no plan B, no backup plan. At the end of the day, who's going to force them to have a backup plan? It would be Russia or the United States.
It doesn't matter if they have backup plan. They have chance right now. Call Kremlin and say, listen, we're done. Let's talk. And then, of course, they will be dictated their surrender conditions. And if they don't follow, Russians will continue to do what they're doing now. And it doesn't matter if the United States wants it or European Union, nobody cares. So if not, and again, you have to understand, they cannot talk to Moscow. You know why? Because it is prohibited by the Ukrainian constitution. That's the point. That's the funniest thing. It was so, you know what? Then it will continue, so until it's all over. And there you go. So it doesn't matter if they have plan B even, So, and Zelensky knows the moment he lifts the receiver and calls Kremlin, he will be dead. So it is the, glass jar in which bunch of the scorpions, from large ones like United States to small ones, just run around each other, try to, kind of sting each other. So there you go, let them. What can I say? And Russians know that.
At the border of Ukraine and Poland, they're having some problems. The Polish farmers are not happy with the situation, and Ukraine doesn't have access to the Black Sea. It seems that the Zelensky administration is gradually destroying Ukraine, because if Poland doesn't agree with them right now, how after this conflict they're gonna let Ukrainians use their border?
No, it's decided already now, and when you have the Polish farmers driving on the tractor with saying Putin, come sort it out between Ukraine and Brussels and carry the Soviet flag, that tells you a lot, and then of course they threw away 160 tons of Ukrainian grain in one of the. It's a terrifying picture, really, when you look at those carts and grain on the ground. And so if some people say, oh, it's GMO, it doesn't matter. It could have gone to actually, people who really need it, GMO or not GMO, who cares, if you can fight hunger in the world and things of this nature. But yeah, it's one thing to make the political statements and do the political theater, like hugging each other, saying, oh, yeah, like we're friends. No, they're not friends. Poland has its own very legitimate, economic interests, and Ukraine is, crossing them. And guess what? The reaction immediately follows. And it's quite natural reaction. You cannot blame Polish farmers for that. It's their livelihood. People need to work, they need to sell their product, they need to make their living from that. And then suddenly you have these guys who have been promised all kinds of the, hugs and kisses in the West, just doing things which haven't been supposed to be done. And the reaction follows immediately. So Polish farmers in this case are absolutely correct. But for now, it is primarily economic. There's some political calls there, but it's economic kind of type of pricing, so to speak, and it's legitimate. It has the reasons for that. So, and Ukraine, well, they are destroyed essentially. So there's very little which they can do now.
Do you see this type of reaction on the part of the public opinion in Poland coming to the political parties in Poland?
Polish elites hate Russia. They hate it with all their guts. I mean, they just abhor Russians. Poles, on average, however, they're not as aggressive. But the problem is, again, we know the game. Again, anybody who by now use the word democracy, it's going to be laughed at. Okay, everything already have been bought and lined up that only right people get elected. And so even if the Poles will try to elect somebody else, it's not going to do much good. So their Polish elites will continue to hate Russia and do everything stupid about it. But essentially, economic reality should, so to speak, bite them in the butt. And it's already beginning. And they will have to adjust their policies simply for the reason of survival. Do not forget, when Macron stupidly and laughably dropped this proposition to send troops to Russia, guess what? Poland was one of the first who said, you know what? Go screw yourself. We're not sending anybody. So there you go. So no matter how they hate Russians, no matter how they supported Ukraine and send indeed those volunteers, so to speak, nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to live. And there are certain red lines nobody wants to cross.
When you talk about the Polish elites, like Sikorski, whose wife is a neocon, do you talk about those people who are connected to neocons?
Radek Sikorski is a psycho. I mean, he absolutely delusional, as his wife, who is she doesn't have normal education. She's a neocon. She's falsifier of the history. So these are the type of the people. And again, do not forget, their hatred of Russia comes, for example, if you look at Poland per se as state, Poland hate Russians because basically it was Russia which prevented Poland from becoming the empire itself. From Morze to Morze, as they say, from sea to sea. So Russians kind of are hated there by them because, yeah, these were Russians who not only prevented them, they actually incorporated them into Russian empire. Don't forget, Poland was part of Russia. So, but in Neocons, it's a racial hatred also. It's hatred for perceived pogroms, which they carry on. So they hate Russians on the ethnic, religious, ethnic, and racial reasons. So it is profound and you cannot fix it. So, and this is what is being channeled through those people into Poland. So it's kind of amplification of what already existed there. So yeah, when you talk about neocons, most of them are genocidal maniacs. They would love to see Russian people just completely die out and just disappear. So this is how they are.
Do you remember when this war started, there was a debate between Sikorski and Michael McFall and John Mearsheimer. They were debating on the issue of the war in Ukraine, in which Sikorski was picturing Russia in that debate. He was picturing the Soviet Union. And I don't know why he was doing that, because Russia today mostly has nothing to do with the Soviet Union.
Well, first, let's start with Michael McFall, who is known in the United States as the foremost authority on Russia. The guy's a complete idiot, and I mean it. So same goes for Sikorski. Those, again, when I say they are uneducated, you look at the thesis they write. It's you know what? It's the level of the freshman year in some university. It used to be in the 80s and 70s. These people are absolute morons. Michael McFall, by the way, for being a Russian specialist, he doesn't even speak decent Russian. So is Sikorski. He was in Afghanistan supporting Mujahideen. These are fanatics. And again, fanatics, and add here that they're fanatics who are very uncultured. And how to put it politely, these guys are impotent in terms of any kind of the serious academic or statesmanship skills. This is the way it is. You can take, for example, Walter Model of Wehrmacht, okay, who was a fanatical Nazi, okay? But guess what? The guy was a genius military leader. He was really damn good, So this is not the case with modern Western elites. There are no Walter Models there, mostly of Michael McFall and Sikorski, propagandist ideologues who have no real skills in anything. And again, as I already stated, they are uncultured. So they're simply fanatics who have no background.
Sergei Lavrov, he was talking about the UN Security Council, and he said that they're supporting Africa, Asia, and Latin America to have representatives in this council. If we were going to have some sort of balance in the international relations, that would be the case that Lavrov was talking about.
Obviously, there is no doubt that the representatives of those very large geographic and economic and demographic clusters should be present in the Security Council. As the problem, of course, is the fact that United Nations itself, as the organization, completely compromised, and so Lavrov is doing the thing which any diplomat, a real diplomat, will do. He tries to save some kind of the platform or exchange structure, but I don't see how United Nations will survive in the form it exists today, especially since it is located in the United States, and there's always the problems with the visas and access of diplomats to the United Nations. So essentially, I think so. It either will be somehow die out, it will die out probably, or will be abandoned, and some new structure, diplomatic structure and global structure will emerge. Could be on the base of BRICS or could be something else. I don't know. But Lavrov is doing his best to save, United Nations Charter. And then, of course, United Nations, which is utterly corrupt. We know it is corrupt.
The other institution that brings all these countries together is G20. How do you see the G20?
Well, it's just G20 is economic powers of modernity talking to each other, but it is nothing than a conversation club, essentially. It doesn't have any serious, so to speak, charter mutually agreed by participants, as it was with the UN Charter and creation of the United Nations, because obviously it was created by the victors in the World War II. So G20, it's just probably going to be G20. People will get together, talk about economic political issues, and probably will stay the same way. I don't know.